Help! Someone stole my Facebook account and is pretending to be me. Has this happened to you? If so, join me in this episode as I explain one of the reasons why this may have happened to you. This is Media Channels, a multimedia corp production, bringing you information about the latest media trends, helpful tutorials, and commentary on the digital world around you. Welcome everyone, my name is Stuart Rathtree, hosting episode number 9 of the Media Channels podcast. Having your Facebook or other social media account hacked is certainly not a fun experience. Believe it or not, I have never had a social media or other account hacked. It is likely because I have over 20 plus years of experience in the IT field and even longer as a computer junkie. I still remember the days of bulletin board systems and dial-up modems. Security was a lot simpler back then, and all you really needed was a simple password to get in to these bulletin board systems. But I digress, so let's get right into the reasons why you may have been hacked. The first and most serious way that your various social media accounts may have been hacked is by a method called SIM hijacking. Okay? Now, although this is not a new method, hackers have upped their game, so to speak, to make it more effective than it used to be. So, SIM hijacking is basically the theft of your mobile telephone number. A SIM card is basically just a small digital chip, which is also a smart card that contains some basic information about your cell phone and your cell phone service. Most modern phones, they do use SIM cards, and if you have an unlocked phone, you can actually swap it between the different devices as well. SIM cards can be hijacked in one of two ways. Method number 1 happens when somebody physically takes the SIM card out of your phone when you're not aware and puts it into an unlocked phone. Now, in this method, once the person has access to your SIM card, they basically just unlock the SIM card if required, and by using a code, most typically. So each phone has a different code to unlock it. Telco providers provide unlocking service, but you can actually buy the codes online as well. Once the SIM card is unlocked and connected to the cell phone network, the user can then proceed to the next step of stealing your various online accounts. However, in method number 2, the hacker doesn't require physical access to your phone, and this is the more insidious technique, and it happens when someone who knows your phone number and just a little bit of your personal information. They basically calls into your telephone provider and pretends to be you. So the hijacker then requests to have the SIM card transferred to this new device. The hijacker will make up a lie such as that the cell phone was stolen, it was lost, or simply because they bought a new phone and want to transfer the service to it. This method doesn't require unlocking the phone or the SIM card because they're going to do it on their end. Sometimes the telecom provider or the telephone provider will also offer to transfer the information that has already been left on the built-in memory of the phone as well. And if that happens to you, then you're in real trouble in that situation. Even though most telcos are starting to wise up to this and are, in my experience, putting more extra security measures in place, such as passwords, to make account changes, it is actually still happening at an alarming rate and increasing. Hijackers, they're getting more and more clever in obtaining your information by what is an inside man approach, and basically the inside man in the telco feeds sensitive information to the outside party who wants to do the hacking so that they know how to answer any security questions that may be on your account. Another method that hijackers are using is through bad Teleco practices, and this could be a lazy or improperly trained customer service rep who doesn't go through all the security steps before making a change to the account. The typical hijacker will then simply keep calling into the call center over and over again until they hit that one agent who is willing to make the changes to the account. Now, because most call centers are not the most friendly of workplaces, I've worked in call centers, and if you have yourself, you know how it is. The employees tend to either become complacent or otherwise hostile to the policies that the company may have put in place. Because of this particular work environment and the fact that most call centers, they tend to reward performance metrics rather than rewarding employees for dedication and hard work, these types of calls and problems can slip through the cracks in the call center. So what happens is no one is really wiser to what is actually happening in these situations until the customer calls up trying to figure out why their cell phone no longer works. Unfortunately, by this time, it is often too late, and the hijacker likely has full control of your information already and has already made changes. Once the hacker has your cell phone details, they can then get into your online accounts in one of the following ways. So number one is they use your text messaging or the SMS feature on your phone to perform password resets on your accounts. So for example, if you go to the Facebook password reset page and it asks you what method you prefer to reset your password, you will see there's two options there. It gives you the option of email or SMS. So sarcasm mode on for a moment here. Facebook, in their, I don't know why they do this, but in their infinite wisdom, they haven't thought to disable this despite the increase of hackers getting in this way. And it's been a long time feature as well. I mean, you think they would catch on by now that they need to fix this, or at least make an option to turn it off. So Facebook at this point will then send you the reset code directly to the hijacker at this point, and then is able to log in with your credentials and do whatever they want. I did look at various platforms as well besides Facebook, and I've made a list of companies that gives you no discernible way of disabling the SMS password reset and ones that do. So in the con category, the bad no-nos are obviously Facebook and Twitter. There is absolutely no options that I could find that allows you to turn off password resets via text messaging. The only way you can remove it completely is simply to remove your phone number from the account altogether. But in the case of Facebook and Twitter, these are not desirable because the phone number is actually tied into many of their services as well, and they use it for verification purposes. In the pro category, we have Instagram, we have the Google Play Store or your Google account if you have an Android device, Reddit, iTunes, Snapchat, Pinterest, and LinkedIn. And actually, the interesting thing about LinkedIn is that it has a checkbox for turning off SMS password reset. The other ones just don't allow the option at all. And then I looked at some Canadian banking sites, and I can't find any Canadian banking sites that does SMS password resets. But if your hijacker already has some of the basic information about your account, they may have already gotten into your phone, and they may have also have some of your personal information, so they may be able to get in another way. So this is why it is a good idea, in my opinion, to have security questions or personal information that is different on your banking site than it is for your everything else. In the other areas of the world, there seems to be a mishmash of different policies regarding this. I would suggest checking your online banking account to see if this is an option. If it is, then try to turn it off. If you can't, maybe call up their tech support and see if there's a way to turn off text messaging password resets. Of course, none of this matters because all of these platforms, well, not all these platforms, can be rendered insecure using the login with Facebook feature. So if you are one of those kind of people who don't like memorizing passwords and you just say log in with Facebook whenever you create a new account on a social media site, and if Facebook becomes compromised, the hijacker can simply use your Facebook authentication to compromise the rest of your accounts that may be linked this way. So you may not want to use that in the future, because if your Facebook's compromised and everything else is compromised, and they can at that point change settings in your other social media accounts or other websites. Number 2 is through two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication was supposed to be the promised land of security login credentials, but it has since become the black sheep of the security world, at least the IT world anyways. So basically, two-factor authentication requires a second verification point to be able to log in. And unfortunately, this verification point is usually by text message, unfortunately. And you can have your accounts compromised in exactly the same way as if someone was hijacking your phone. So there are solutions like Google Authenticator, but they don't totally address the issue either, because what happens with Google Authenticator is you'll still be getting notifications on your phone. So if your phone is in some other way compromised, people are still going to see what that code is on your phone, right? So it's not a great method. Two-factor authentication, I don't use it because it really is not helping you in any regard. Now, if two-factor authentication allowed you to send to, let's say, a computer device or some other secure device that isn't easily picked up and carried away or otherwise compromised, then yes, I would say that would be a good solution. But because it's a cell phone or other device that's easily compromised, then there's no real point to it. And in method number 3 is much more cloak and dagger, and it does involve text messaging password resets again. But in this method, you simply need to receive a text message or an app notification on the victim's lock screen, okay? So anyone who's clever enough can simply walk up to the victim's phone or walk behind this unsuspecting victim and do a password resets behind their back and just look over their shoulder and see what that code is. Okay, people are going to click on it and see, well, what's this text message, right? So this method doesn't require any hijacking whatsoever, and basically just requires a stupid person looking over your shoulder. You know, what if you left your phone out and this code comes on your screen as well? So this one doesn't require any hacking, really. It's basically just someone who's a little clever can get it in that way as well. And that's how they'd reset your password. The second way people get into your various online accounts and social media accounts is through commonly used passwords and shared passwords. So for instance, back in 2013 and 2014, Yahoo's email system was hacked, and people were only made aware of it in 2016 and 2017. This was quite the challenge for Yahoo and for people in general, because basically their entire database, username password database, was leaked to the internet. And even today, I still see rogue emails coming in from compromised Yahoo accounts. People will share their passwords with every account, and so once they have their Yahoo password, they can just try Facebook, try LinkedIn, try Twitter, try your bank account even, and see if they can get in, right? So that's a very common way hackers use to exploit your account information, get in, and make all kinds of crazy changes. So if you are not in the habit of changing your password on a semi-regular basis, this would be a good habit to get into. So try not to share your password with every account. And I know that memorizing a bunch of random letters and characters is a royal pain in the butt, but I have a technique for you that is not as painful. And as someone who's worked in the IT industry, I was used to memorizing dozens of passwords at a time, at any particular time, and I understand that not everyone is going to do this. So here are my recommendations so you don't have to memorize a whole bunch of passwords. Solution number 1 to this is divide up your passwords into categories. Okay, so for instance, in category 1, I would put ultra secure passwords. So these are meant for banking, websites, and administration purposes, or maybe even your work computer. Category number 2 is passwords I would use for social media and other semi-important passwords such as your laptop. And then category number 3 I use are basically just throwaway accounts. So accounts that you don't care if somebody gets into them. You just create sort of a lesser secure password, something very easy to remember. You just use it across a whole bunch of different websites that don't really contain any information. So for category 1, I would typically use a long password that is 10 characters or more. Okay, so having a long password is more important than having a short password with a bunch of random characters in it. Because if someone's trying to what's called brute forcing, basically just guessing random passwords until they get in, having a longer password takes longer to get in than a shorter password. And I never use common words for this category, and I give it some randomness as well. So what I do is I memorize a core password, okay? And depending on the website or the administrative purpose, I would then use variations of that same password, so I don't need to memorize 5 or 6 different secure passwords for every system. So for example, a secure password might be JSLK $42224 at capital L, and that's a little more than 10 characters. So that would be category number 1. And for category number 2, I tend to use easier to memorize passwords, and I also use more common words in them, but I always throw in a couple of numbers or random characters in it to make it more secure. And that will actually help a lot of, when you set up a password on a lot of websites now, they want you to have all these crazy characters in there. So you could use some common words and then mix it up with some numbers and letters. Usually a capital letter is required as well. You can then add slight variations to the core password depending on your social media network you are using. And I find it is easier to memorize the variations rather than memorize a completely different password. So an example of a category 2 password could be 56 capital S social media capital ROX exclamation point. Basically 56 social media rocks. So obviously that's not my real password, I just made it up. But you could use something like that. It's a lot easier to remember than a category 1 password. And try not to use your birthday or anything in there as well. I mean, that's pretty common way hackers will get in, is by guessing your birthday as well. And then for category number 3, I will generally use common phrases such as, I don't care about this account 100. So these accounts might include sign up for a forum or a newsletter where there is no personal information being used, and if somebody gets in, who cares, right? So those types of things, yeah, use a password like that, and just throw it away. Those are the throwaway accounts. And the other option you have to secure your passwords are what is called password managers or password vaults. And these can be apps on your phone. They can be a browser plugin or on a desktop application. These can be actually quite useful if done correctly, but I tend to find them very clunky, especially if you're on a desktop. You know, you're going into an app and you copy and paste, and whatever. So I don't use them, but that's not to say they're bad. Password managers, however, they can be open to malware on occasion, and if someone gets into your phone and already knows your master password, they basically have all your passwords. So you have one point of entry, and that can also be a downside to that as well. So if you do plan on going the route of a password manager, you have to be super diligent about keeping your master password secure and basically the vault secure. So if you get compromised in some other way, someone might be able to get into your password vault. And then another way and much less common way that a hacker can use to get into your accounts is through a technique called network sniffing. And it works in basically the same way that a party telephone line system works. So basically, if you've ever been on a party line, there are 3 or 4 neighbors that generally share a single telephone line, and each extension would have its own telephone number. So when the phone rang, the ring pattern would be a little different. So you'd have like 1 long, 1 short, 2 short, 2 long. So there would be a different ring pattern. That's how you'd know it was for you. So internet-based networks operate in the same fashion. In that telephone party lines or extensions could be simply picked up on the phone, and that someone could snoop in on someone else's conversation, just like the party line system. So Wi-Fi in hardwired networks can be snooped on in the same way to listen in for someone's passwords. Now, this is obviously a much more harder technique, but people who know anything about computers will know there are tools out there that you can sniff out what's called network packets. Okay, so once they have the password, they can basically do whatever they want at that point. And this used to be especially problematic on public Wi-Fi spots, but it is less common now because most Wi-Fi networks and websites actually force you to use an encrypted communication protocol, which scrambles up the password, so that people who might be sniffing can't actually see what the password is. And then there's the more nefarious person who may set up a fake Wi-Fi hotspot at, let's say, a coffee shop or a popular area, and you log into it, and then you go to try to log into Facebook or something, and then they can steal your password that way. So the unsuspecting victim is not usually any wiser that it's a fake Wi-Fi spot, and they go and log into wherever. So this is why I do not recommend going to any secure website on a public Wi-Fi network. It's just a bad idea. And one of the final ways that hijackers can get into your various online accounts is through phishing schemes. And I don't mean going out to Lake Superior and stealing your buddy's 20-pound lake trout and claiming that you were the one that caught it. Okay? Phishing schemes, and it's actually spelled differently. It's phishing as in PHISH. So it's spelled a little differently. It's like a hacker lingo, basically. But phishing schemes operate by soliciting people through email, social media, or over the phone, and so forth. So the hijacker will pretend to be an authority on a specific company, or maybe an agent of the company, and they will request you to click on a link. They will ask you to download a file to fill out a form, or will otherwise request you do an action that will end up compromising your computer or tablet or so forth. So in this situation, you'll be giving over your personal information to them, and when in fact it turns out they're not a legitimate company and just pretending to be, and at that point they got the tools, some more tools necessary that they can perform another hack on you in some other method. So this one happens very often and usually results in the electronic device being infected with malware, which in turn sends personal information back to the hacker. Once they have the personal information, then they can go nuts. So my recommendation is to avoid these situations, be aware of these situations, and that most companies won't send you off to a website claiming that there's a security issue or some other issue that you need to resolve, or that you haven't made a payment, or that you're being arrested by the FBI or the RCMP or anything like that. These types of people are not going to send you an email. They're not going to call you on the phone. They're not going to send you correspondence over those methods unless you were the one who initiated the phone call to begin with. So never download attachments. Never click on links that come from a source that you don't know, or unless you subscribe to maybe a mailing list that you're aware of. And even if the web or if the email website link may look legitimate, it can be easily verified if it's legitimate or not simply by hovering over it with your mouse if you're on a desktop and using a common email client. You can, just by hovering over it, there'll be a little pop-up that shows you the link of the email. So if the link in the email is the same as what's actually on the screen, then it's probably legitimate, okay? I mean, not always, but probably. But usually with these phishing emails, what happens is the link looks like it's a legitimate link, but then when you hover over it, it points somewhere else, okay? So you know that's not a good thing at that point. So yeah, once you click on it, they're just baiting you to try to click on it, and then from there, they got you. So my recommendation is just don't click on links that you don't know. Only trust emails from people you do know. And if you're not sure, you can simply call the company in question and ask if it is a legitimate email. But never use the phone number in the email that you may have received, or you may be phoning into their own call center that's just going to keep scamming you. So be 100% sure that it is their phone number. Search the web for their phone number and make sure that it is correct. And when it comes to issues of trust, be careful of who you trust in this digital world. Now, this last method isn't really hijacking per se, but I thought I would share my thoughts on the matter anyways, because this one seems to be extremely common, and every other week I see someone who has had their Facebook account stolen, but in reality it wasn't really stolen. So what I mean by this is that the hijacker has set up a duplicate account identical to the victim. So in these cases, the hacker or the hijacker probably didn't get into your account, but it might seem that way. So the perpetrators in these cases have simply downloaded public parts of your Facebook account or online presence and have created a duplicate account pretending to be you. Now, they do these for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons is so that they can harvest your friends list, and they do this by sending out your friend requests, right? So if you ever had a friend request from someone you know, and then you friend request them, and then the fake user account then puts out more friend requests, right? So this is what is called data mining, and it can be done for the purpose of spamming your friends with, let's say, porn accounts. Could be selling your information to third parties for advertisements. Could be sending off to foreign countries. Could be sending it off to other databases for email solicitation later down the road as well. So once they harvest your information, they can then repeatedly spam you and your Facebook friends friend requests as well. So if you get into that situation, it can become quite irritating, and I know that as well. I get friend requests all the time from people I don't know, and I have to try to figure out if they're legitimate or not. So I'm only aware of 2 ways to battle this, and if you know of another way, let me know. But the first one is to basically lock down your Facebook account so that nothing is publicly accessible other than maybe the profile picture, no public details. And the second being, don't accept duplicate friend requests unless the person you know legitimately has a business and a personal account. And I do that myself. I don't use a personal account anymore, but I used to. I know I have a lot of friends who have a business Facebook account and a personal one. So you can usually tell if this is the case simply because the information will be a little different. So the business account will have a different photo than the personal account, and some of the information will be different as well. A lot of people will have a business account sort of they have one for work purposes usually. So this type of data mining, it seems to be a symptom of a larger security issue that could be happening as well on your computer or your device. So it may be a symptom and not the first attack on you. Okay, so just be aware of that if that's happening to you. So it might be something else you need to check out with your computer. Now, I have personally never been aware of someone cloning my Facebook account. And it's strange because I do have all my privacy set to public, but maybe it's because there's no information relevant in there as well. So everything on my public side is basically public information anyways. So there's nothing private in there. So it could be I'm just not an easy target. And I would suggest that this may also happen to individuals. Again, to repeat that this is, you may have had a security issue in the past, so you may have become an easy target for them, and you were swiped up into a database that could have been later used by a robot, and then the robot is just a automated tool that hackers will use to harvest email addresses or spam you and so forth. So in summary, I have created a do and a do not do list on how to prevent getting hijacked or hacked. So number 1 on the list is do turn off your SMS password reset if you're able to on any website that you have an account. Remove your cell phone number from your account if it's feasible to the network that you're on. Number 2 is do not use two-factor authentication unless the app itself has a way of protecting itself. Okay. Number 3 is call your telephone provider and request to have additional security on your account to prevent account changes. So this could be a PIN number or a password. Tip number 4 is only use online banking if you are on a secure network and never if you are on public Wi-Fi. And I can't stress this point enough. Just don't do it on a public Wi-Fi network. You never know what's going on those networks. Number 5, if you can, now I don't know how it works on the Apple ecosphere of devices, but on the Android devices, you can turn off lock screen notifications on your smartphones so that they don't display sensitive information when the screen is locked. And it also depends on the application as well. So for example, on my Samsung Galaxy, I can set the lock screen to only show you have a new text message instead of showing the actual text message itself. Also, don't include sensitive information on your lock screen at all, because if you're not at your phone and somebody picks it up, oh, look at this, there's some information there I can use. Number 6 actually is fairly simple. Actually use a lock screen and use it with a PIN, or modern phones that have a fingerprint reader in them. So don't leave your phone laying around so that people can get into your stuff. If you have sensitive information on it. Number 7 is to use secure passwords and don't use the same password for every website. So memorize 3 core passwords, categorize them, and use variations of those 3 core passwords. Number 8, change your password on a somewhat regular basis. Okay, so that's a fairly easy thing to do. You don't have to make huge changes. You just have to change a couple letters or numbers sometimes, and that's all you really need to do. Number 9 is don't necessarily trust emails or phone calls from what seem to be legitimate organizations. So most official and sensitive correspondence is done by snail mail, not by email or over the phone. Avoid clicking on links and or downloading files from unknown sources. And this basically dates back to my technology or my help desk days and cleaning up computers. You know, one of the number 1 problems people had in getting viruses on their computers is that they were downloading files from unknown sources. Okay, so this pretty much concludes this episode of Media Channels, but before I end it, I'm going to tell you a story that happened to one of my buddies recently, and I thought I would share it with you. And in this story, like all good Canadians, my buddy likes to go to Tim Hortons for a coffee now and then, and he decided to go through the drive-thru. So for those of you not in Canada, Tim Hortons is a popular coffee shop chain that is basically everywhere in Canada. I mean, even up north in some places. So anyways, my buddy went to go pay for his coffee at the drive-thru window, and there was a pay it forward chain happening in the drive-thru at the time. So the previous person had paid for his coffee. So, and of course, Canadians, are very polite and know all about being generous to their neighbors, right? So being the nice guy that he is, he told the cashier that he would like to pay for the coffee for the car behind him. Now, this would have been a nice gesture, but it turns out that the car behind him had ordered a bunch of sandwiches totaling $30. So the cashier then was like, so you just want to pay for the coffee and not the entire bill? So and then my buddy's thinking to himself, well, I don't really want to pay for the entire bill. I just want to pay for the coffee. But if I pay for just the coffee, it would kind of seem weird and kind of cheap to do so. So my friend gave in, and he ended up paying the entire bill. So the customer behind him ended up getting a pretty good deal that day, to say the least. And I have to wonder if that the vehicle behind the one that he paid for, maybe they even had a bigger bill and the person was going through the same thing. So anyways, so the moral of the story is don't be generous when you're doing pay it forward. Just accept that someone was generous to you and be thankful for it. I mean, there are always plenty of opportunities to be generous that doesn't include emptying out your bank account at a Tim Hortons drive-thru. So anyways, thank you for watching or listening. To view or listen to more of these podcasts, like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel using the watermark in the bottom right corner, or follow me on Twitter. You can also listen to these episodes on popular podcasting platforms such as iTunes and Stitcher. For a full list of podcasting platforms, please see the description or visit the website at multimedia.ca/media-channels. And I appreciate your support. And to all my people kind, don't let those hackers get into your accounts, and don't let Trudy get you down.